Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Thanks for joining the day before Thanksgiving. Much appreciated. I wanted to remind you that last week we launched Google Chat. Thank you all so much for your lovely participation in the app so far. I wanted to remind you that we do have a competition going on for a free iPad mini. I'm going to drop the all of the competition details in the chat right now. But one of the requirements is that you join 2 This Week This Morning calls with your camera on and take a screenshot of that. So far, we've got Lee Smith, Paige Hewitt, and Patty Henry that are in the competition for a free iPad mini. And Robin Page. Yes, I love it. So yeah, if you guys want to be eligible and turn your camera on and take a little screenshot, that will make us very happy. And then just a reminder that we will be doing like lots of really fun competitions on Google Chat. So if you can be on there as much as possible and attentive, yes, Jenny Bliss. We have full 4 Pacers tickets to give away. We have lots of fun stuff from the brand boutique and just some really fun stuff. So I encourage you to be on there as much as possible to get all the fun free goodies. Okay, on from Google Chat. Today we're actually going to talk about another new tool that was launched by @Corporate last week called Pipeline. I think this is going to be really nice for you guys. It's a great way to keep track of your business, both your volume goal and your commission goal as you move throughout the year. So I have a quick slide deck that I'm going to share with you. Okay, guys, so Pipeline. Today, we're going to talk through a couple of things. We're going to go through what is Pipeline in general. We're going to talk about some reminders. Pipeline is this really cool tool that utilizes a lot of information from other tools in platform. So it kind of requires some pre-knowledge of some other things happening in platform. So we're going to just remind you guys of a couple of things. And then we're going to go through, it has a lot of automations built in through the CRM and through the deal management system. So we're going to talk about what those look like. And then I'm going to hop into a live demo. That makes it sound like we're going to be talking about the pipeline for this entire call, but I promise I'm only going to take 10 minutes. It's going to be quick. Okay, so if you're in platform, this is what your pipeline is going to look like. You're going to have it when you get on to platform, you're going to see it over on the left-hand side, and then it's also going to be a widget on your home dashboard. I'll show you what that looks like in a second, but you're going to see your 2024 volume goal and your commission goal, and then you're going to have these columns down here that are going to have cards in place that help you kind of visualize what your clients are all doing within the system. So are they hot? Are they warm? Are they under contract? Are they closed? And if you don't remember what those words mean, we're going to talk about what those are in a second. Okay. Can anyone tell me, does anyone remember what hot and what warm mean? You're welcome to drop it in the chat or unmute yourself and tell me. What is hot and what is warm?
I can tell you for me, hot is I'm actively engaged in the next 60 to 90 days to actually make a purchase. Warm means, yeah, I'm thinking about it. It might be a year or so out.
Yep. That's great, Lee. Yeah. So in our system, what it means is warm is someone who's 3 to 6 months out to actively start searching or actively list their property. So they're somewhere on the timeline of getting to you. Hot is okay, we have an active listing, or they're just about to list, or we have a search set up. They are looking for properties. Got it? Okay. Warm, 3 to 6 months out. Hot, they are we are talking to them a lot because they are actively looking. Okay, some other reminders our DMS folder. So I know you guys are in the DMS often, so this shouldn't come as a surprise, but just in case, it feeds a lot from the DMS, so I wanted to talk through. There's 3 different types of folders in the DMS, okay? You have your property folders, which are for listings. I think it's super not intuitive that they named it property folder rather than a listing folder, so I'm going to say that a lot. Your property folders are for listings. So when you have a listing, you create a property folder. Your buyer folders are for buyers. So when buyers are ready to set up a search, you set up a buyer folder. And then when either a property folder for a listing or a buyer folder goes under contract, then it turns into a deal folder. Okay, you got a deal, you got 2 sides of the party, they're under contract, then you have a deal folder. Okay, so those are my reminders, your property folders and what warm and hot mean. Okay, so let's talk about some CRM automations. So when you're in pipeline, you're going to see these people pop up under your warm column, meaning they're going to buy in 3 to 6 months or list in 3 to 6 months. It's because you've tagged them as that in your CRM. So the way you get people to show up in your warm column is you have them tagged in your CRM as either a warm buyer, a warm renter, or a warm seller. Got it? And then the pipeline is going to follow whatever you're doing in your deal management system. Okay. So when you create a property folder for a listing or a buyer folder, that means your people are hot. You're actively working with them. And then when you create a deal folder, then you're under contract and they're going to automatically move over to your under contract column. And then when you close out a deal, when you put in that finalized deal form, then it's going to move them over to your closed column because you have closed them out. Okay, let's get into it and do a little bit of a live demo. Okay, so we're in platform here, and to get to your pipeline, you're going to see this little widget pop up. You can either hit this view pipeline option, or it's over here in the left-hand side and you see this little new banner pop up next to it too. So I'm going to go ahead and click on pipeline, and this is what it's going to look like. So you're going to have your volume goal here and your commission goal. And if you want to change any of those, just hit on these 3 little dots here and hit update my goal. And then you can put in what your sales volume goal, what your commission goal is. And then you can also put in your average price. And if you remember, this is going to connect to your CRM. So it's going to tell you, okay, great, Rosie, if you want to sell $10 million this year, then you are going to need to close out 29 deals. And to do that, you need to reach out to 7 people per day. And then you can say if you want to update your outreach goal. One thing to note, one of my big questions when I was looking at this is like, well, like 2024 is almost done. Can I go ahead and put in all of my stuff for 2025? And the answer is no, not yet. You need to wait until the calendar year switches over to 2025. And the reason why is because it's reading all of the things that are down here and it's going to automatically populate what's happening here. So I'm hoping that that will be an update at some point that you can toggle between year 24 and 25 or 25 and 26, whenever it comes out. But for right now, we're just going to look at 2024. And then as soon as it hits January 1st, I'll remind all of you guys, hey, remember to go in and set your goals for 2025. Okay, so let's look at these cards. So we have our warm column. Remember, we've tagged them in the CRM as warm. We have hot, who we're actively working with. Under contract, meaning we have a deal with them, and then closed out. One thing that I saw when I got in here is like I had a million people under this hot column, and it's because I had, well, me specifically, I don't really do active business, but I'm demoing in here all the time. So I had like a million property and buyer folders that I need to go in and clear out. So if you get to this step and you're like, wait, all of these buyers, like I thought they were going to turn into something, but they never did, or they decided to wait or whatever, and you want to get them out of your hot column, you can just hit on these 3 little dots and hit view buyer folder. It's going to take you right to the DMS buyer folder, and you can just archive that folder. And then they're going to get out of your system. You can always go back to this folder eventually and reopen it if they decide like, hey, the time is now and I'm ready to go. You can go back in and update that. And then the other thing that I want to look at is, so you see how a lot of my cards have these little like alarmist exclamation marks. If that annoys you and you want to get rid of them, what that's telling you is you're missing information in your card. And almost always that's going to be information on your commission, because you have to manually enter in what your commission is going to be for a deal. So if I wanted to get rid of that exclamation point, I can just hit on those 3 little dots and hit edit card. And you're going to see this information up top here. It's grayed out and I can't access it because I put it in when I was creating the actual deal folder. So if I wanted to edit any of this top information, I can just go to that folder and edit that from there. But what I can edit is this estimated commission. I hate math and I hate doing it in my head. So
Hey,
don't.
Rosie, your pop-up screen didn't show up, just FYI.
Oh my God, guys, I've been talking for so long and you didn't tell me? How dare you? Ugh, I'm disgusted with all of you right now. I'm just gonna tell you. Okay. Well, I'm gonna do a brief overview then. Okay, we got volume, we got commission, we got our cards, all the things. You guys are the worst. Ugh. Okay, so if I see these little annoying exclamation points and I want to edit that, I'm going to hit on the 3 little dots and I'm going to hit edit card. I can't access this information. I'll need to go to the DMS folder. But I'm going to put in my estimated commission. I'm not going to do math in my head, so don't tell me if I'm putting this in wrong. I'm just going to say that my commission is $10,000. And then I can put in the estimated close month. And I'm going to say this is going to close next month. And I'm going to hit save. And then that annoying little exclamation point goes away. So almost always it's going to be that commission information that you want to fill out. Okay, let's say you want to add a new card. You have this big add new button right up here at the top. I'm going to hit add new. I'm going to add a client from my CRM, or I could add a new contact and they'll automatically be added to my CRM, just like any of our other tools. And then I'm going to choose a category. So I'm going to start with a seller, and I'm going to say these sellers are hot. They are ready to list. And you're going to see this little, it's not an error, but it is like a warning that says like, hey, if you have a seller that's ready to go, like you should just create a DMS folder for them. So it's going to prompt you to do that. You can technically create it without a DMS folder, but I think it's going to work best if you go ahead. It does not delete the contact if you delete the card. Great question, Lee. One thing I did want to point out, though, is you now have a way to track referrals in this system, too. So if I want to hit referral, like, so you've sent an outbound referral to someone in Miami and you're just kind of, you want to track that towards your commission because it's going to be eventually a check that you're going to get. You can put all of that information in here without creating anything in the DMS. So feel free to do that as well. And then the last thing that I really wanted to show you on the pipeline tool is this list view. So right now you'll see I'm in kind of this like tile or card view here, so I can see this nice breakdown, but they do have this list view that I really like because you can filter it by close date. So for instance, if you're like, I want to look at everyone who closed with me in 2024, and you'll see that my husband Jason closed 3 properties with me in 2024. Good for him. Just kidding. I just demo Jason and all things. What's great is you can just export this list. So for instance, if you're like, okay, I want to pull everyone who closed with me in 2024 because I want to send them like that nice like Scrabble cap gift that corporate is putting out right now. I can just export that list and then upload it into the cap gift. Or I can export this list and be like, I want to invite them to all of the client events that At Properties is going to put on in 2025. So it's just an easy way to grab that list and stay on top of like, okay, who all closed with me or bought with me in a certain year. Okay, that is all that I am going to talk about today. Do you guys have any questions, especially because you turds didn't tell me that my screen didn't flip over? Thank you, Lee Smith, forever for speaking up. Any other questions about what the pipeline tool looks like? I think for the most part, it's self-explanatory, but get in, play around with it. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, I am done. Mark Nottingham, or Megan Sullivan, actually, you're up next today. Up to you.
I am. Thanks, Rosie. Super cool. Fun that we're another new tool to dig into. Appreciate that little snapshot. I wasn't paying good enough attention to point out the pop-up. I'm sorry. Would have had your back.
Thank you.
So Rosie mentioned earlier at the top of the call about the Google Chat contest that we are running right now. And I just wanted to take a minute to hit on one component of that. So one of the little tasks, if you will, to enter the contest is related to previewing property. And so I just wanted to take a minute and talk about this, what that means, what that looks like, and a couple social media best practices. So previewing property in general is a great thing to do this time of year when listings are sitting anyway, if you have time on your hands. I just want to remind you of a couple things. So one, when you're scheduling those showings, whether you're in a showing time marketplace or if you're in Indy and using Broker Bay, you do need to schedule those showings as an agent inspection or preview, depending on which system you're in, depends on what it's called, signaling to the seller of that property that you are going in as an agent to see it, but you're not bringing a buyer. So you just want to make sure that's transparent to a seller. And then just a reminder as you're posting on social media. So, I know there are different schools of thought on this in different marketplaces, but our general guideline is to remember that if you are promoting a listing that is not yours, well, first of all, the rule is that you need to be able to get to the listing on the MLS or BLC page. So on MyBoar's page or IRMLS's page within one click. And that means not back to the App Properties website if it's not an App Properties listing, if that makes sense. Obviously with Instagram, one click to a link is not an option. And so what people are kind of default to is just making sure that you, first of all, have permission from the listing broker, I would suggest in writing, to be promoting someone else's listing. And that you're also giving them credit in your post or whatever you're doing so that it's very clear that it's not your listing if you are marketing it. This is all tied into the code of ethics that you won't market a property that you don't have permission from the seller to do so. So I know most of you were rolling your eyes and you're like, we know this, but I don't think it ever hurts to remind you. Something that came up for me as it relates to grievance within MyBoard this week that I hadn't really thought about, I'm embarrassed to admit. But this also applies when you're representing a buyer and you are making pending or under contract posts, specifically in that you should not ever be using listing photos if you don't have written permission from a listing broker to do that. So if you're going to post that you've pended a property, meaning you've brought a buyer to that contract or to that seller, you need to either snap your own photo or make sure you have have permission from the listing broker to use those photographs, which are their property. So nothing too exciting, but those are my 2 cents that I just wanted to share as you're out there, hopefully previewing property in the next few weeks so that you can play along in our Google Chat contest. So that's all I got.
Morning, everybody. Thanks, Rosie and Megan. Happy Thanksgiving week. I want to start out by telling you 3 things that I'm grateful for that are connected to the industry. There's many things that I'm grateful for that rank above these 3 things. But these are 3 that are pretty relevant right now. I'm curious if all of you have heard these, and I'll take questions on them if you'd like, because I think a few of them are just enough outside of what you would normally be paying attention to. I'd be happy to clarify, at least to the degree that I know, what they might mean for you. So my 3 to start out. Number 1, the national settlement was approved this week. So I don't know if people realized like all the stuff that went into effect July 1st. technically until this week, that was all speculative, like a preempting of the industry to say, here's what we're going to do because here's what we've agreed to do with the other side of the lawsuit. But a federal judge has to declare that that's satisfactory, which didn't happen until this week. So in one sense, what that means for you, nothing changes in the moment, but it does mean the changes that have been in place now for several months are likely to be the changes that we experienced for like quite some time. So there's some solidity now in that. Number two, October, nationally, October was the first month in 3 years that year-over-year transaction count went up. October was the first month in 3 years that year-over-year transaction count went up. So what that means is not September to October. There's plenty of times where from, say, like it's always going to be from January to February, from February to March. So transaction volume always does this throughout the year. So it's generally compared to like October of this year to October of last year. So October of 24 had more transactions closed than October of 23. That was the first time that's happened since the middle of 21. So transaction volume has been going down, 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 down for 3 years. Last month was the first time that went up. Anybody want to take a stab at why transaction volume likely went up in October of 24?
Because it was really down before.
If that isn't the most Jenny Bliss McMillian answer, I love it. Yes, Jenny, it was very low in October of 23, but that has been true for all of 24. What happened that
I'd say
uniquely
because we had a
caused?
dip in September in the interest rate.
Yes. Lee's nailing it today on the call. Yeah, way to go, Lee. Yeah, that's what it was. Interest rates. So there was that, like everybody kind of knew it was coming, but you remember, I mean, on this call, we talked about it. It was September 18th was the day that everybody had been anticipating for quite some time. Rates went down. They'd already kind of been priced into the market, but when they officially went down, there was for sure this like spike or kind of a miniature flood of activity. And so transaction volume went up in October for the first time in 3 years. Now, does that guarantee that transaction volume just steadily continues to increase? No, because it doesn't tend to do that. It is a really good indicator, though, that mentality in the marketplace began to shift. So that doesn't mean November of this year will be higher than November of last year. It does give a pretty good indicator that transaction volume has hit or is very near its floor of activity, and that it is indicating that it's likely to start trending back up. So that was number two. Number three, I know we've talked quite a bit about commissions. We're not really going to hit very much on commissions today, but I wanted to share one very specific piece of information that I thought was really interesting. And so I'm going to give you a quick reminder of context here. So context is industry-wide, like nationwide, and in our marketplace and within our company. What our observation is that the changes that went into effect this summer, for some of us in July, for some of us in August, those changes have caused commission on the buy side of a deal to get wider. It hasn't really shifted it up, and it hasn't really shifted it down. Again, nationally, regionally, and within our company, the data, all the data that's out there suggests that the average rate that a buyer is making, or sorry, that a buyer's agent is making repping a buyer on a purchase has held steady. What has happened is that the range of what those commissions used to be was like this, and that range has done this. So what I believe that indicates is the most experienced, highest value proposition agents are actually making more than they used to on the buy side, and that likely lesser experienced, or probably more importantly, less value proposition, perhaps like a more discount business model, they're making less than they used to. Many of you have referenced this. We've talked about one of the significant upsides is that now, as a professional on the buy side, your compensation conversation starts between you and your consumer based on your value proposition, rather than starting in a conversation between two or more people who you don't know, right? The seller and the listing agent. Well, the stat that I wanted to reference, October of this year, so last month, our company's buy side commission was the highest it's been in a 30-day period of time in 3 years. I'm going to repeat that. October last month was the highest our buy side commission as a company on average has been in 3 years. I don't want to make too much of that. It's a 30-day period of time. But we have kind of said October is the first month that, so even in like June, as we were looking at this, we said, well, yeah, we're going to see a little bit of this in August. We're going to see a little bit more of it in September, but it's not really until October that we would see the entire company closing deals on the buy side that had buyer agency contracts in place where there was likely no sort of cooperative being offered in the MLS, right? And it was the highest our buy side commission's been in 3 years. So one thing I'd say to that is, way to go in articulating your value proposition, being confident in what it is you provide to the consumer. I also hope that that's just relevant information for you, in recognizing the consumer, when given the opportunity to have the conversation about your value. As of right now, what it's indicating to us is that your buyer is willing to agree to pay you slightly more than the seller and the listing agent were. I think that means, I mean, y'all know I'm always the glass is half full. I'll admit that. But I think that means we have a better than average realtor that is a high value proposition, full service, conscientious professional. And that in that conversation so far, they've been able to earn higher than they were previously. So I'm really encouraged by that. Okay, I'm going to make a transition to an interesting article that Realtor.com put out. Some of you may have noticed this if that's a publication that you read. We've hit on this topic quite a bit, and I thought this was interesting, so I'm sharing it. And this isn't in the category of like, I don't think it's necessarily good news or bad news, but it's relevant information. Every time, for a long time, every time that an article came out about the most affordable metropolitan markets in the country, Indianapolis would be somewhere in the article. Fair? Like we all know this. For years, the consistency was when it oftentimes is the 30 largest metros that get measured. Sometimes I'll see it a little bit lower, higher number than that. But the largest 30 metros, that catches Indianapolis. Indianapolis would be somewhere right about in the middle, somewhere in that 15 to 20 in terms of size, depending on where you draw the line. But out of the 30 largest metros, Indy was typically ranked as the second most affordable, usually after Memphis, Tennessee. And I don't know if any of you would make a point of citing something like that in conversations, other professionals, buyers and sellers. That was a reality of our marketplace. And Indy is still a very affordable marketplace nationally. However, I'm going to share my screen and go to a MyBoard tool that we often look at. I haven't looked at this in a bit, but I use it fairly often. So reminder, this goes, so from your BLC homepage, you have the MyBoard Market Insights tool. It's this market trends tool that I often use. I highly suggest checking it out on a regular basis if this sort of thing is helpful to you. Sorry, I have to stop. And then, so now I'm actually going to go into that tool. Yeah, there we go. So this is Central Indiana, right? We've looked at this before. Some of this is consistent with what has happened nationally, right? Like every market in the country, if you go back to 2016, has seen a significant increase in pricing. Two things that set Indianapolis apart here. Number one is the consistency of the increase, right? So any metropolitan market has seen price increase in 16. Many of them, though, are not quite as steady of an increase. They might go through like kind of fits and starts, might level out for a while, might see a significant increase in certain periods of time. Indy has seen a measurable increase every year, even in a year that much of the country saw a decline or a flat increase, which was from 22 to 23. And then even from 23 to 24, right, in a low transaction count, high interest rate climate, prices in Indianapolis were very resilient. Do you see how much they went up from 23 to 24 in this graph? Peaking at, so again, this is Central Indiana, but peaking at, I think it was like 318 was the highest 30-day period of time for median price in Central Indiana. Okay. Now I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to share this Realtor.com article. And there's a map there that I thought was pretty interesting. So the article is the most affordable metros in America where you get more bang for your buck. And Redfin has put out some stuff like this as well. I think they typically put good information together. This starts out by telling you the 5 markets that are the least affordable, therefore the lowest percentage of people can buy a home there. That is Los Angeles, Oxnard, San Diego, San Jose, all in California, and New York City. Fairly typical. But the 5 cities that they ranked as the most affordable, which in all 5 of those, 60%, basically 60% of households could afford to own a home: Pittsburgh, Akron, Baltimore, Detroit, and St. Louis. And they highlight each of the markets. What is a median home price? What percentage of people? What's a median household income? They kind of give you a profile of what a median house is like, which I think is interesting. But the map is, it struck me as I read this. I was like, oh yeah, Indianapolis was on this map forever. And now, not coincidentally, with a little bit of an exception there in Baltimore, kind of creeping East Coast, but generally it's been the Midwest that highlights this. So the South used to be a little bit more affordable. COVID ruined that. Prices in the South went way up during COVID. East and West Coast has always been more expensive. Midwest has typically been the most affordable. But Indianapolis is on a different trajectory than the majority of the Midwest, essentially than all of the Midwest. I'm going to stop my share here. I said earlier, I don't think this is inherently good news or bad news. Clearly, it depends on your position in life and your perspective. If you own a home, or multiple homes, and you're looking at it through the filter of what is that asset worth, and how does it contribute to my net worth and future capacity? Well, it's good news for you that Indianapolis is outpacing its Midwestern competitors in price. If you are a future first-time homebuyer, this is a challenge because as we've talked about, wages are not keeping up. So the affordability of a house in the United States hit a low this year, by most measures, like a 30-year low. So combined median home price, interest rates, and median income, just trying to measure the percentage of people in the United States that could buy a house, was at its lowest in 30 years. That's an economic issue. We all know that. What I'm trying to highlight today is Central Indiana, and really this is true of West Lafayette and Lafayette as well. I would actually value an opinion from one of the Evansville people. I believe it is true in Evansville, but to a lesser degree. Central Indiana is outpacing the rest of the Midwest. And sometimes I think this is important information for your conversation with consumers, particularly in this mindset of, I want to wait until I can buy the house that I really, really want to buy. If I was going to try to pinpoint, like, what consumer is this data the most relevant to? It's the consumer that is about to enter the housing marketplace as a buyer and realizes, with my income, with my debt, student debt probably, with where interest rates are and where pricing is, I can't really buy the house that I really want to buy. So I'm going to do what? I'm going to wait. Our job is not to talk that person out of waiting. Our job is to help them understand the implications of waiting. Their job is to decide. I think what many consumers are still assuming is, oh, it's cyclical, prices will come down. There's close to zero evidence that that will happen. And they're thinking about the entry point as like a neutral factor. Like, it doesn't really matter when I enter in my stage of life. Like, if I buy a house when I'm 26 or I buy a house when I'm 32, what's the difference? I think the difference for many of them is that, I'm picking the number, but if they choose to buy a house when they're 26, that may not be the house they really want. They have likely secured their ability to buy the house that they really want when they're 32. And then if they do not buy the house when they're 26 that they don't really want, they may have made it less likely. And matter of fact, it's fairly sure that they have made it less likely that when they're 32. I was chatting with a local real estate person here, runs a property management company, lives in my neighborhood, been around Indianapolis real estate for a long, long time. And I thought this was really interesting. He has 3 young adult kids, and he was sharing about his conversation with his 3 young adult kids. And this is somebody who, I don't know how many rentals he owns around the city, but it's several hundred. So this person clearly bought in to the value of owning real estate, right? And he was sharing about the mentality that his kids had. I remember particularly one of them lives in Tampa, which is a less affordable marketplace than Indianapolis. And he was talking about the his realization. He said, look, I get it. I've realized when I was in my late 20s, I was able to buy the house that I really wanted. And all 3 of my kids are doing quite well in life. They've been smart with their money. They have steady income. None of them can buy the house that they want. And it's not because their expectations are unrealistic. They're having to go through this thought process of, am I willing to buy a house that might not be the one that I want, in order to secure the likelihood that in 5 years I could buy the house that I really want. I think that's where this data is relevant to you, and particularly a first-time buyer or potential first-time buyer is like, hey, FYI, Central Indiana has generally had as a part of its value proposition, we were top 5 affordable marketplaces for sure, oftentimes number 2. Then I think that day has passed. If you look at anything that would indicate future housing price, what's our job market look like? What's our state's financial picture? What's economic development look like in Indiana? What are population trends? Even just the number of thousands of people that are migrating, like net migration from Chicago to Central Indiana alone every year. All of these things would indicate this trajectory will continue. So I know I hit on this a lot. Some of you are like, hey, it's great, Mark, we get it. And he's becoming less affordable. But I think it's a good thing to hit on calls like this to make sure you've got the data in your hands so that you're not just saying to a consumer, hey, trust me, don't wait. I don't think that preaches well. I think what is likely much more helpful in that conversation is to share the information that it's real, right? You're not putting it together. Here's the information. Here's what's happening. Reference the MyBoard chart, reference the Realtor.com article, and say, your call, no pressure. Here's my concern if you wait it out. I'll finish by saying, always happy to have that conversation with you, to practice that. If you're in a situation, I appreciate a couple of you have done this in the past, where you're like working with a buyer and you're trying to find this balance of, I know that it is in their best interest to buy a house right now that may not be their dream house, but I find it challenging to push them on that. So how do I navigate having that conversation? More than happy to be a resource. Text or call me anytime. I'll see if I can't help you think through how to ask really good questions to help that person come to a self-realization of the upside of their 2 options. So appreciate all of you. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving tomorrow. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. We will see you all next Wednesday.